everyone. Welcome to the Graceologie with Gwen Smith podcast. I'm Gwen Smith, and I am so glad you've joined me today. Around here, we have fun, faith-focused, grace-filled conversations, all to help you know and trust God more. Our discussions are honest, often humorous, and always practical. And they're going to encourage you in meaningful ways to live out and lean on the grace of Jesus in the midst of cluttered, messy days. You got any of those? I know I do, and I can't wait to get to today's conversation, which is all about finding the peace and purpose your soul longs for. Today, my guest is the lovely and profound Rebekah Lyons. Rebekah is a national speaker and best-selling author of several books, including You Are Free and her brand new one, Rhythms of Renewal. Described as an old soul with a contemporary, honest voice, Rebekah is a Floridian living in Nashville with her husband, 4 children, and 2 toy poodles. And you're going to love her. Let's face it, daily struggles with anxiety and stress make it difficult to receive God's peace for all of us. In today's episode, Rebekah shares openly of her battles to overcome anxiety and depression, and she invites us to discover and boldly pursue our God-given purpose from a place of freedom. And let me just say, this discussion is deep, biblically rich, and powerful. Rebekah shares some practical steps you can take each day for sustained emotional, spiritual, and relational health. And who doesn't want all of those? She unpacks 4 rhythms that, when put into practice, will rescue you daily from worry, stress, and anxiety. Hang tight because you are going to love today's episode. Hey, Rebekah, I am so excited to have you on the Graceologie show today. Welcome.
Thank you. Oh, it's my joy to be with you.
Around here, we always start off our conversation with what I call the Fast Fun Favorites round. We want to get to know you in a casual, girlfriendy kind of way. So are you ready?
I am, I think.
We'll start off easy. Rebekah, sweet or salty?
Salty.
Same. Okay.
In every way.
I like that answer even better. What time do you wake up?
Well, which time is the question. Usually 4 a.m., unfortunately. And then I try to go back to sleep for like another hour and a half. I don't know. I'm still trying to work on that clock. It's just what in the world? Why do we wake up at like 4 something? And then, this is more than you asked for, but I usually have to kind of like meditate in prayer during that time. And then I usually can fall back asleep by 4:30. And so real time, I wake up about 6.
Wow. You were freaking me out with that 4 a.m. answer. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Amazing.
No, it's not my preference. The Lord and I are talking about it a lot right now.
I get it. Totally. Okay. So would you rather read a book or watch a movie?
Read a book.
What is your go-to makeup item?
Oh, a brow pencil.
Yes. Good one. What's your favorite brow pencil?
Well, I've tried a lot. Brow Wiz from Sephora is a good one. And I just tried a Lancome one because it was like, if you spend $30, you get a free little tote with some whatever in it. So I just tried a Lancome one. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Yeah. Free gifts are the best. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite emoji?
Oh my goodness. The eye roll.
Especially with teenagers, right?
Yeah, the eye roll. I told you I was salty, so it works.
I really, really appreciate that. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at golf?
Oh my goodness. I am probably a 3, but my husband keeps convincing me I'm like a 7 because I think he just keeps wanting me to get back out there with him constantly.
He's an encourager.
Oh, he's a 10, and he wants me, like his dream is that I would be, right there with him.
Of course.
So I'm the reluctant companion who goes not nearly enough in his opinion. But I would say after I've done it a few times for the summer, I might be a 4.
Wow. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. It's a complicated game.
Yeah.
Okay, Rebekah, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Florida, in St. Petersburg, near the Bay.
Yes, I love St. Petersburg. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're at Trader Joe's. What's in your cart?
Oh, for sure, the orchids, because they're only $12.99 there, and they're beautiful. And then, like any flowers, ranunculus, whatever. I love fresh flower arrangements, and Trader Joe's has the best selection for the best price because I'm a frugal I'm a frugal girl, but I like nice things. So I try to like figure out ways to make that happen that aren't going to break the bank. And then what else would be in my cart? Oh, the dark chocolate peanut butter cups.
Oh my goodness. You're speaking my language.
Seriously, we just went this weekend and my daughter and I are like, we need the acai packets from the freezer section because Bon Bon Bowls are my favorite. I go all the time to the ones in Franklin. They're amazing, but they're $10 each. And, you know, if you go every day, like that's a lot. So we buy the packets and we try to make them at home and they're not the same, but they'll work. They work. So yeah,
you'll
that's
have
three
to
things.
Email me your recipe for that so I can put it on the show notes.
Oh, for sure. And Trader Joe's has really adorable cards. Have you ever seen their cards?
They totally do, and they're $1 each.
And they're only $1.
I know.
I'm telling you.
It's the best.
I'm like, this is gold right here. So.
I'm obsessed with their 21 season salute, which is one of their mixed spices with 21 different things. It's amazing. And then yesterday I actually bought a fresh basil plant.
Oh, yes,
So
for sure. I get those. And if you keep them in front of the window, I have a little bar cart that is now a plant cart. Yeah. And I keep it in front of the window and I water them almost every day. And those plants that are supposed to be temporary from the grocery stores, like basil or mint or oregano, whatever, they'll last. I've had a couple that have lasted me all summer. They just keep growing. Okay. And I never really transplanted them into the ground.
You've inspired me because I actually have it in our 4 Seasons room and I was wondering if it's going to die by tomorrow. So,
well, you just have to keep it in front of the sun. It has to get morning sun and a lot of water, but it'll keep coming. So I make homemade pizza and I love fresh basil leaves on it. So I'm like, this plant needs to stay alive so we can keep eating pizza.
Now you're speaking my language. I love it. Okay. So we talked about Gabe being a good golfer. How did you meet your husband?
We met in college. I was starting my sophomore year. He was a freshman. So I always remind him I'm 10 months older and wiser. And we met at a wedding, mutual friends. And then we wound up going in Florida, actually. He had traveled down and I was from Florida, so I was there for the summer. But, you know, a month later, meeting each other again at a football game. And we were in school in Virginia. And it was a bunch of mutual friends. We went to a friend's house and we wound up talking all night on it. It's like where everyone's hanging out, coming back to college for the second year. Everyone's excited to see each other. We're at some house. Everyone's like, you know, school's not quite started yet. And so we wound up just like hanging out late, talking, laughing so hard, all pretty much till like 3 or 4 in the morning, laughing our heads off hysterically. Never like made a move, nothing. We just laughed so hard. I don't even know. I was like, this is delirious, apparently. But we then wind up dating other people. Like we never hooked up, nothing. No way. Yeah. So then I wound up getting serious with a guy, wind up getting engaged 3 years later. He's very serious with a girl, ready to propose. And then just through the Lord's just kind of providence, because neither of us had a peace about it. And we weren't talking to each other during this time about those things. It was just the timing. I broke off the engagement, and within, weeks from that, he had already, I guess, broken off his almost engagement. And then we just wound up talking again and hanging out. It was so weird. It was like we had that moment that first night. And then 3 years later, we were like, yeah, I really like you. You're fun. You're an awesome person to be around. And then within 6 months, neither of us wanted to rebound with each other because we're like, that first relationship after the real serious one doesn't have a strong chance.
That's true.
So we were like, let's just have fun, hang out. And we were just in such denial. And our friends are like, you guys really like each other. We're like, no, we don't. And then within, a few months, he told me he loved me. And it was just amazing because I think we all we knew it, but we just were scared of it because of just walking out of some other things. So
that's cool. That's a cool story. That's so funny because I have an 18-year-old daughter and she hasn't dated yet and she's looking forward to this season, but I always tell her you have to have so much fun with whomever you're going to marry. Like you need to be able to laugh and really enjoy each other as friends. So I love hearing that.
Yes, for sure.
And the final question in our not so fast fun favorites round is, what's the best way to spell the name Rebekah?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm biased, but it's what my mom told me. Rebekah.
K-A-H. That's right.
Yeah, apparently I had to correct people my entire life because, there was no Becky. It wasn't like my best friend called me Reb, R-E-B, and my brother called me Becca Book because all I did was read.
That's the cutest. That is the cutest brother name, because most brothers don't give nice names. So that's really cool.
Well, I had a jumper with an R on the front because my mom liked to home make me clothes, like culottes and jumpers and stuff. So once she appliqued an R on it, and he did call me Rover when I wore that, which I was like, that's not quite as nice as Becca Book, but whatever.
Yeah, well,
that's what brothers do. They kind of have to throw it both ways.
Totally, 1000%. Well, that was totally fun. Hey guys, I just want to say a quick thank you to all of you in the Graceologie community who have rated this show on iTunes or who have written a short review. It makes such a big difference. So if you happen to be listening and you've not yet done it, I would really appreciate it if you would. Would you click your podcast app or go visit iTunes and give us a 5-star rating or just a quick 1-sentence review? From my heart, it would really mean a lot. Now that we're past all of the silly and really casual questions, let's move into getting to know you more. Why don't you just go ahead and tell my Graceologie community more about you?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I guess I start with the roles, right? I think a lot of times people are like, tell us about yourself. You're like, well, I'm a wife and a mother and I walk and a dog walker of 2. So my husband and I have been married 22 years, December, and we have 4 children who are 18, 16, 14, and 6. So yeah, there's a little gap there. I'm very well aware.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. She starts kindergarten tomorrow and we're all like, wow. We thought we were going to be empty nesters in 5 years, but now we're going back to kindergarten. So either I'm insane or just walking this life of faith. We adopted her from China. We brought her home 10 months ago. So there's that. And my work life, I guess, my vocation is writing, which I was a late bloomer. I didn't even know I could write until I was like 36. So I've been writing. This will be my 3rd book in 7 years. And then I never planned to write, and I never planned to teach on a stage or preach or speak, whatever. And the book just kind of opened that door. And then as I would teach, and I remember the first time I ever spoke, I said, this is the first and last time I'm ever doing this. And then I think it was like at a MOPS MomCon thing where I was like in a workshop in the corner, and I don't know, I think people just had pity on me and came. There might have been like 30 people, and I just proceeded to cry through the entire talk. It was horrible. Aww. But at the end, they all stood in line, and it was like we just connected so much because our pain does become purpose. Yeah. And it was just like the Lord used that time to show me, like, you really aren't in charge of all your days were written in my book and planned before one of them began. Yeah. And so if you surrender to that, if you surrender to me and you trust me, then I'm going to lead you on a wild ride that you didn't have in mind, and it'll be good. And so that's really kind of began my speaking thing. And so now that's really what I do the most and probably find the most fulfillment from is teaching. Teaching and preaching is like, I feel like I'm on fire or something. And I'm not, but there's been these sayings from these just heroes of the faith of the last couple generations. And I forget who said this, and you might know this and put it in the show notes, but he said, the Lord meets me most in the prayer closet and in the pulpit. And it's just this idea of the parallel of like, when I do wake at 4, I often go to my closet. I literally kneel while I pray because I'm already awake. Might as well. Right. And I've just had some just powerful encounters with God in that place that then I sometimes recall when I'm in the middle of teaching, and it'll just come out. Yes. And so I do think our calling is where our heart sings. It's where we come alive, and where it almost becomes effortless for us because he's already given those gifts and put those in us from the womb. And then he's going to show us how he's going to execute and mobilize and get those gifts out.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Our calling is where our heart sings. And I know exactly what you're saying. It's like the sweet spot, right where you feel most alive. I love that. Well, it's so interesting to hear how the Lord has been leading you and navigating that path of career and family in your life. And the books that you are bringing to our community of believers have been amazing. And I'm so excited about this brand new book you have coming out. Just even the title, Rhythms of Renewal. I just want to take a deep breath. So I love that. So this book is called Rhythms of Renewal. What's the story behind writing this one? Why did you do it? And give us the background on that.
Well, most writers, we have to live something before we can ever tell the story.
Yeah.
Because we would have no ownership or authority. It's not like, hey, what do people want to hear? No, it's very much about, God, what is it that you're leading me through, and what do you have for me? Because sometimes when we're in a hard season, we just can't make sense of it, right? We're just like, when is this going to be done? And yet there's such a pruning and sanctification that's happening in real time, even though we don't want to acknowledge it.
Totally.
Like there's a maturing and a growth that comes from that being buried and being pain, just like in nature, right? When you're buried and you're unseen and you're hidden, there's actually a lot of roots going deep. Yeah. And so the backstory on my first two books is that when we moved to New York in 2010, we left the suburbs of Atlanta and we sold 75% of what we had, and we moved our three kids to Manhattan on the Upper East Side. And one thing to reference is my oldest son, Cade, who's 18, has Down syndrome. So he was born when I was 26, and that was like 6 hours later, I found out that he had signs of Down syndrome. So I didn't even know. That was my entree to motherhood. And that was the first, I think, moment where the Lord just was like, I'm going to arrest your life. I'm going to actually change the trajectory of what you see for your future. And it was scary, and there was grief because because it was unknown, but also there's the death of an imagination that you thought might be. And it's not because it's better than what's actual, it's just different. Yeah. And it's so abrupt, and you don't really even know what to do with it. But at the same time, God used that first year while I settled into that new reality to show me what unconditional love really is. Because with Cade, it was all of a sudden, Mama, are you going to love me for me, not for what I can do or accomplish? And so that I meet these milestones. I remember I cried a lot in the first few months, and I cried a lot on his first birthday, because I think I had still had these expectations of performance that would have happened, these milestones by a certain date. And I'll never forget his first birthday, it still wasn't there. And I had to get honest again that I was always this achiever, this firstborn, like wired, that my worth was attached to my accomplishments, because I somehow bought the lie that I wasn't worthy of love unless I earned it. And so that started to bleed into how I saw God. And then so when Cade comes on the scene, all of a sudden God's like, no, that's not how I see you. And you're going to get to experience this from the other side and realize like your love for Cade isn't conditional on what he does or how he develops or how fast or what he accomplishes. And it was so natural for me as a mom to see him that way, but it wasn't natural for me as a daughter of God to receive it that way. Yes. And so it was like the Lord used that season. And so then we had 2 more children, and I was scared to have more kids, but we did. And then we moved to New York when Cade was 9 and Pierce was 7 and Kennedy was 5. And I was really ready at that time for we just had fresh vision. We were going to help with like just being on some launch teams for some church planning up there. And I was just ready to kind of rid myself of maintenance of stuff and just live loud for God, because we were in a Christian subculture that everyone was, it was like a Christian minivan in our Christian neighborhood. Yes. You know what I mean? Like there was just a side of me that thought, like, I feel like the assumption is so normative that everyone loves and honors God that no one's actually talking about it or living out their faith in a radical way. Mm-hmm. I'm sure some were, but in my life, I wasn't. And I just was, so New York was that. And God got so loud for us in the city. But the one thing that did surface from that is I started to have panic disorder. 4 months in, I started having panic attacks every day. And I was like, wow, this is a new thing. I'm not sure what this is about. And so in that first couple of years, I just cried out a lot, just for rescue. And that happened really in September of a year later. I cried out, rescue me, deliver me in the middle of the night. And the peace of Christ flooded me and it was done. And so I wouldn't call it healing then, because I didn't grow up in a church that really where we saw that in real time. Sure. We would pray for people, obviously, but I didn't see deliverance happen. And so when that happened for me, I was like, okay, I don't even know. We're going rogue. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Am I going to have another panic attack this morning on the subway, or am I not? And they stopped. They really did. And so the first book tells that story, and the second book talks about how there's a freedom that comes when Christ did it all. He did it all. And so he offers us rescue from all these things. Well, this newest book, Rhythms of Renewal, while You Are Free was about how to get free, that moment that Damascus moment, that moment where you're rescued or you're pulled out of the pit, whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm. But this book is about how to live free. And realizing that after those panic attacks ended, I went out to the woods and wrote that first book. And I came back into the city at the end of the summer, and I had to go on the R train to Queens to visit a friend. And I was descending the steps down underground, about 7 flights underground. And the lower I got, all of a sudden anxiety began to rise in me. It wasn't a panic attack, but it was definitely chest pains. And it was like a muscle memory, because it had always, I didn't have it all spring, once I was healed, but coming back in after not having to deal with it for a couple months, it just was it resurfaced quick. And so I remember coming up, I just kept saying, Jesus, Jesus, the whole time on the train. It was me and one old guy. Just get me there, because there was not another way. It's there's a river there. You can't, you have to take the subway. Exactly. You can't take an Uber across the water.
Right.
And so I remember coming up and just saying, God, I wrote in my journal that night, I need rhythms in my life that will keep me for sustained emotional, spiritual, relational health. I realize that you have done the work and you continue to do the work, but you call me into work, heart work. You call me into physical work. You call me into, our minds are still very much a part of a physical body that God created, that we need to actually be mindful of how we are spending our time, where we are giving our thought to, attention to. And so I just literally wrote, I want to work out a program or a schedule for these rhythms of renewal, because I want to do this for a long time. And if relapse keeps coming, and it's not that it won't. And as the book, as you read in the intro, I didn't have a panic attack for 6 years, and it's how I begin this new book, because I just want people to know, hey, when you go through a season of depression or anxiety or something that's hard, and then you find release, praise God, that's amazing. That's amazing. But it doesn't mean that fear is not going to come knocking in the future, because we're still human, we're finite, we're frail, we're fragile, we're in desperate need of God. And so when this kind of resurfaced a couple of years later, the promise God just kept reminding me is that, hey, if you're going to forge new ground and you're actually going to get loud about this, especially the area of mental and emotional health, you're going to kind of be under fire. The enemy's not happy about that, because what he really wants is the church to live gripped in fear. He really does. He knows that if we aren't willfully trying to consciously sin and be all out rebellious, then he'll make us mute by fear. He'll just try the next best thing. And fear is so powerful, because it basically, what it does is we say, I choose to believe that the threat of this situation is greater than everything that Jesus did on the cross, everything that he paid for, everything that he chose to take on, to suffer death and to raise again. I choose to believe that this threat is bigger than that. It's greater and more powerful than that. And so we are in some way kind of rejecting God when we indulge fear. It's not that we mean to, and often we feel powerless to it. And what I've learned is you can feel fear, but you can't indulge it and make, have a big conversation with it and let it hang out. And you definitely can't take residence there.
Yes.
That's what I had to repent of, because I was getting to the point where I'm powerless to it. I can't change it. I mean, it comes knocking every day and I'm afraid. What do you expect me to do?
Yeah.
And yet when he says, in Psalm, or or I think it's Psalm, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Mm-hmm. He doesn't say like, I'm going to camp out there and make my home there. I'm going to hang out and then now say, this is my new story. This is my destiny. I'm in the valley of the shadow of death. I'm going to hang out and I'm going to live here forever. No, he's saying, I'm going to walk through it. Meaning there are going to be things that are coming against you that are going to be hard and painful and things that you'll even grieve. But if those things become a stronghold of fear over your life that actually inhibit you to live free, then it means you're choosing to bow down to fear.
Yeah. Hey friends, Gwen here. I want to talk to you about Bible study. Here's what I know for sure. Everything about your relationship with God will grow stronger when you're intentional to get to know Him more intimately by studying His Word. And the thing is, it doesn't take that long to open your Bible up every day and read. When you have a plan and a community to connect with, Bible study becomes more routine and faith becomes more authentic. But you've got to take the time to prioritize studying the Bible so that you can move forward growing in faith and experience the power, perspective, and peace that God provides and that we all want. Your relationship with the Lord grows stronger when you spend regular time in the Word. And I want to show you how to establish a simple and effective process for studying the Bible. I have a free online Bible study that'll show you exactly how to get started. I'm going to walk you through how to study the Bible using an inductive method that can be done in the comfort of your own home and in a time frame that fits with your personal schedule, even if you've never done a Bible study before in your life. Go to gwensmith.net/psalmadventure. That's gwensmith.net/psalmadventure to sign up for my free online Bible study. And I promise you'll walk away with a clear understanding of how to get started with a personal inductive Bible study plan. Don't wait. Everything about your relationship with God will grow stronger when you're intentional to know and trust Him more by studying the Bible. Yeah, and there's that whole, on the chemical makeup and neurological side of things. I know because I've had other conversations with people about this very thing, that there is the fight or flight. Yeah, because when it starts to take up residence, it's all consuming. And I've experienced that in my life. And I appreciated the way you started the book and that story. But there was something you wrote that kind of, when God revealed to you after this moment of this panic attack, which surprised you because it had been so long, you wrote that on page 9, in His mercy, God gently whispered a response. You can focus on the fact that fear came knocking, or you can focus on the fact that I always make a way of escape.
Yeah.
And as I read that, it was one of those, it was a highlight moment. And I was like, Lord, that's one of the things I appreciate about your writing and what God has you doing is your willingness to be transparent and honest, because really we don't need any more what I like to call, Hobby Lobby sisters in where we just, let's recite a verse and say something that's really true, but not owning the frailty, the pain, the struggle that we all have. And so, so talk to me about the surprise that you experienced with, I thought I was healed from this. So what's up, God? Why would I have to face this again?
Yeah. I think it's partly to keep me so humble and so low, because you're right. I do think if we don't ever encounter struggle, we have a real hard time with empathy and understanding people who are in the middle of it. And sure, I can draw from my experience in 2010, but that's been almost 9 years. Yeah. Or I can draw on my experience from yesterday when I actually had shallow breathing about talking about my book, and I want to be honest with that, because the thing is I probably, just because of my history and my makeup, I have shown to be more prone to this than maybe my husband, right? That just is what it is. That is what it is. I can't change who I am, and he's not changing who he is. So then it's, what do I do with that information? Knowing that this is just going to be a thing sometimes, especially in stressful seasons, when I overschedule. And so what I'm finding is this way of escape looks like a lot of different things, right? In that moment, in that story, it's this little window that got me out of this trapped cell.
Yeah.
But on another level, I think of my everyday life right now, and many women are in the same exact place. And I don't want to be a person who's like, hey, I've arrived, come up here. It's no, I'm in the trenches with you, holding your hand, going, you're not alone. We're in this together. And we're all actually equally fighting in some ways for that peace and purpose to overtake the worry and the stress and anxiety. Because you can't, I think the role of a woman and a mother in so many ways is like the care for her own, right? We always are looking out for our people. Yeah. If we're single, we're still looking out for our people. You're like, it's just, if there's just a nurturing bent that we've been given that we can't shake. So we think of all the little details, like Joy needs her hair in a ponytail so that her hair doesn't get in her food, and like, it's just so innate for me, but I have to tell my husband or tell her sister even yet, because once you're the mom or once you somehow take on that responsibility, you think of all the little things, and those things can pile up. And all of a sudden you feel like you have a mountain of responsibility with very little energy and capacity to fulfill the responsibility that you might carry. And that gap, I think, is where anxiety creeps in.
Totally. So you said, really essentially, so what am I going to do with that? That's what you have to figure out. And I think that, all of our listeners would wholeheartedly nodding on the other side of this conversation saying, yes, stress and anxiety, fear, all of that stuff. It's very real. So let's talk about what we can do with that. I know that one of the things you did with this book, because I love to be real practical. So give me some handlebars to hold on to. Yay. Okay. So you did some research. You featured some research in your book. So I want to know what statistics were most surprising to you and most useful in terms of figuring out what we're going to do with that.
Well, there's so many. Every chapter has research because I really wanted to come around this, not just from faith, but science and faith coinciding, because God made our bodies and we need to understand how they work and how they function and what they need and why they need it. And not all that is completely outlined in Scripture, but we do know that God created us for order and for flourishing. So let's dig into that. And I'm a lifelong learner. I'm very curious about science because I do think it bears out what we believe. Yeah. And so why do we have to isolate one for the other? So for me, data and research was so powerful in like ideas around sleep or ideas around technology or screen time or movement in nature versus a gym or, taking a walk. I just read so many books on it. I just poured over volumes of articles. My husband's kind of a research junkie too, because we run this nonprofit called Q, and he's always looking at what's coming in culture, like what's next, where are people at? And so the most alarming research to where I really realized this is an epidemic was that 77%, according to the American Institute of Stress, 77% of Americans in our society show physical symptoms of stress, not just like it's in their mind, like actual physical symptoms are bearing out to the stress level that they're carrying. And then there's other numbers from the American Institute of Mental Health where it's depression and anxiety. And I outline all those numbers in the book. But that helped me go like, this isn't just like me or you. This is a household conversation. And especially in the generation coming behind us, because they've been raised on a screen. And so they're already having to navigate things you and I did not in our youth, as far as losing actual connection, which is why connect is such a strong rhythm for me, because I realize the next generation, if we don't make eye contact and we don't get on each other's levels and we don't embrace and we don't hug and we don't listen and lean in and don't have any screens in the room, like that actually is going to rob our children of their own humanity. As like flesh and blood people, because you just are not going to accomplish connection on a screen at all in the way that you will in the same room. You just can't. It's not even possible. And so there's science in the book about that. Science in the book about what are you putting in your bodies? Part of why we are so fatigued and low energy and can't think clearly is because we're just literally just feeding our bodies caffeine and sugar, and wine, repeat, And that's just not nourishment. I look back about like what people ate in like the Bible times, was all homegrown, organic, very healthy. And so in some ways there is this cadence that God created everything in rhythm. Yes. And when we get out of rhythm, our bodies pay the price, and our minds pay the price, and our friendships pay the price. Our confidence pays the price. Our calling pays the price. And so the point of this book is like, if you do these 4 rhythms, even small, subtle expressions of each every day. I'm not trying to give people a to-do list. It's things you want to do. Right. It means you need to stop. It's more of an undoing of the things that you're doing that are robbing the life that these rhythms bring. So they're rest, restore, connect, create. The first 2 are input, meaning it's for you to be replenished and filled back up. And the rest piece is that heart, soul, mind, that inner life, just getting quiet, So I loved writing the chapter on morning routine, because I feel like that sets the cadence for your day. It's foundational about your posture towards people, towards God, towards yourself. I really loved the chapter routines for deep sleep, because as you can tell, that means a lot to me.
It's 4 a.m.
And sleep is a superpower.
Okay, so talk about that. What did you find out about sleep? Why does it matter? And what do we need to do to make it better?
Well, because our body is actually restoring itself while we sleep. Yeah. It's actually, it's like the work of the liver happens most between 2 and 4 a.m., right? Wow. So if you're awake a lot during that time, it's because your liver is stressed. I didn't know that. I didn't know that until I went to my doctor, but the role of the liver is to detoxify your body. So of everything you put in it that day. So part of like just understanding that the body is actually repairing the damage done the day prior while you sleep. So if you don't actually sleep, then there's a buildup of toxicity in your system that you're just trying to function through, which is why your immune system crashes and your adrenals aren't operating well. And then over time, you're just you know what it means. It means like you're kind of spread so thin, you snap at like the smallest thing.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never done that.
I wouldn't know anything about that, but from what I've heard
exactly.
From what I've heard, that person can be really like not fun to deal with.
We know it's one of those things. It's like, we know that's true. It even as you speak it 1000% resonates as truth with every ounce of, cell in my body. And yet, boy, we like to play with that. So what are some of the real practical ways you have found can make our sleep better and can prepare us to actually prioritize sleep? What are some of the tricks of the trade?
Yeah. So a big tip I give in that chapter specifically is that the more organized and the more ordered and intentional you are with your day, the more intentional your sleep will become, more ordered and structured and organized. So I list out in that chapter several things you need to do in your room before you go to bed.
Like what?
Dinner. Well, you can't eat late because your body's trying to work to digest, and that'll keep you awake. So you need to be done eating 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed, like completely. That's hard, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
I know I'm not quite there. We go to bed early. That means we need to be done by 5. I can't do the senior special at 4 p.m. My kids are still at swim team. So I would say go for 3 hours of like, if you could be done eating by 6:30 and then kind of in bed by 9:30 or 7 and 10. For a lot of people, it's more like be done by 7. Don't put anything else in your body after 7. Definitely don't put like alcohol or something like that in your body after that amount of time, because that actually, it'll make you drowsy, but then it'll stop and it'll spike at 3 in the morning. And especially wine, I've heard that it will just wake you right back up once that drowsy thing wears off. I know. I'm like a buzzkill right now. I'm sorry. So there's
Rebekah.
There's that. There's the other piece is don't have your phone in your room. Like the blue light of a phone actually tells you to wake up, whereas the red light of a sunset is natural melatonin for your body to start to go to sleep. So instead of getting on your phone at 8 p.m., go for like a walk around your neighborhood, or at least sit on your front porch with some water, but not much else.
Drink your water, people.
Yeah, or I guess you could do like a bedtime tea, because it's mostly water if it's decaf. I think that's fine. It's just be mindful of what you're doing those last couple hours. Take a bath, light candles, like hush the room. I talk about that, like just softening the lights. And then unfortunately, like TV's not great before bed because again, you're stimulating yourself.
Especially news.
Yeah, please don't do that for yourself. Yeah.
Please no.
I don't even hardly tune into the news beyond just like articles I'll read because I feel like I get bottom line, and certain sites that will give you full picture versus not, and we don't need to go there. But yeah, I do think. And so here's the thing. If you do a tech detox, that's early on in that rest chapter, you'll realize either A, how dependent you are on it, but if you can do it for a couple days even, you'll realize how much time you'll get back and where you'll actually start thinking clearly again and go, how could I proactively actually structure my day? Because you can't make a change if you can't make a plan. And you got to make a plan. You got to make a plan before you can work a plan. And so part of it's like remove the things that are distracting you from actually the intention that you need to change. And then when you remove those things, you'll automatically be like, okay, I'm kind of bored. Now what? Well, maybe I should think about how to improve some areas of my life. So like the first chapter of rest is called Take Inventory. And it truly is like take inventory of your life. What's working, what's not, what's confused, what's missing.
Yes.
And when you do that, you'll have a pretty good gauge. Like you have it in you. That's the thing for the listeners. This probably feels overwhelming, but the truth is you actually have been given everything you need. Yes. You have it in you. You're just worn down and you're tired. And I wish I could like pull you close and give you a big hug, because we all have those days and then they become seasons and then they become years. And so the phrase I heard so loud when I started to really restructure this seriously was, it's never too late to reestablish what you want your life to be about. And it's like, man, I'm in my mid 40s and we just adopted a 6-year-old. I really need to make some changes. So yeah, and just know that all this investment you're making right now is for your future self.
Yes.
It's for your family. It's for your kids. It's for your spouse. It's for your community. It's for your coworkers. It's not just going to benefit you. It's going to benefit everyone around you, because you are actually going to live in a way that rewires maybe, and what it does, it actually will reveal the kind of subtle addictions that we all have, because we want to give our time to something, and it's usually not always the most beneficial thing. So when you can at least identify those things, it doesn't mean remove everything from your life that you enjoy. Please, no, I'm not going to be that person. But it is go, okay, if I do want to have this extra special thing, or I want to watch this extra special series, do I have the self-restraint to go, I'm going to do it this way. I'm not going to binge for 10 hours. I'll let that be like part of my rhythm. Like that'll be something fun I do with my husband and we watch it at this time on this night. But like just not letting the addictions take over and then you pay the price the next day.
That's powerful. I just think even the way you do start off the book with that instruction to take inventory, it just seems like a practical starting point for every single listener. The value of what this book brings to our community, and even just as I was reading through, it really causes personal reflection. And I think that we become so into, I'm a lifelong learner as well. I'm committed to growth and personal development. And I think that I can sometimes want to do more things instead of think through all the things. So I think that, for those of you who are listening who have not yet picked up a copy of this book, which I strongly encourage you to do, Rhythms of Renewal, it's definitely a starting point. I think something that every single one of us can do. So what did that look like for you? What did taking inventory look like? Can you do it in the midst of all the people? Or do you have to get away? How did that play out for you?
I think for the first time, if it's your first time, it's good to just do it in solitude. You could include your spouse if you're married, but I would maybe even start before that, getting an idea. And there are questions at the end of that chapter. In fact, on my website, starting yesterday, we have a Take Inventory of Your Life guide.
Perfect. I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes. Yeah.
It'll walk you through every rhythm. And so instead of, I'm not asking you to do more things. I'm only asking you to do 4 things, like do less things. Just do these 4 things and start to do them well. And it will actually be this big exhale for your life. And you'll feel more joy and more fulfillment and more peace, which is the goal, right? That we don't carry stress every room we enter, but you'll carry peace. And so when people start to engage, you're like, man, you feel really settled. What is it that you're doing? You're like, well, I'm making sure that I rest my body, that I restore my body, that I connect with my people, and that I create. Like I work with my hands, and I do the things that make my heart sing. Yes. And when you can kind of, if the things you're saying yes to don't fit in those categories and they're just robbing you, then I'm asking you to undo. I'm asking you to do less things.
Perfect.
So in the end, I hope it's an approachable piece. And like you said, my goal, because I'm just like you and like so many women out there, we need bottom line, we need practical, approachable steps and a guide on what that could look like.
Perfect. Well, if you're listening and you want to take inventory and have a guide, I am going to put a link on the show notes. So for that, you can go to gwensmith.net/Graceologie, find my conversation with Rebekah Lyons, and from there you can get the downloadable. And I think it's going to help every single one of us tremendously. Rebekah, thank you so much. Before we go, can you take a moment to pray over all of these women who are listening? Because I know that their hearts and minds are swirling with thoughts and they're feeling probably, I need to make some changes in my life in this way. God help me.
Yes. Let's pray. Jesus, we love you, and we are so grateful that you are the Prince of Peace, that the peace you give the world cannot give, and that we come under your covering of peace. And I thank you, God, that you've ordained our lives to live in rhythm. You created in rhythm, and we are an expression of that rhythm. And so I pray that you would just make this clear for every woman who's listening, of like the things that she needs to lay down and the things that she can pick up. And I just pray that it would not be stressful for her, that it would not feel overwhelming, Lord, but it would feel like it's not a hand slap, it's an invitation. And I pray that she would feel strengthened and encouraged and find a friend to do this with, because we are better together, and none of us have to walk through this stuff alone. So we thank you and we praise you for who you are. We give you all glory in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. The book is Rhythms of Renewal. My guest has been Rebekah Lyons. And Rebekah, would you just take one last moment to tell my listeners the best place to find you and connect with you online?
Yes. So at Rebekah Lyons on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's just RebekahLyons. My website is RebekahLyons.com. And there will be all the information about Rhythms of Renewal there. You can also, if you just want to read specifically about the book, it's rhythmsofrenewal.com. And I'm going to spell rhythms for you guys, because part of the point of writing this book is to teach America how to spell rhythm.
I actually thought about that.
So one night I just came up with this little song. It's RHYTHMS. Once you know the song, you won't have to guess. So,
oh my goodness, that was
free.
Rebekah, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on Graceologie today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Y'all, I loved that conversation with Rebekah. Be sure to visit her online and connect with her on social media. Today's show is edited by Chad Chooping, and the music is by premiumbeat.com. If your church hosts women's events, or if you have any questions, topic suggestions, or comments, I love hearing from you. Send me a message or a speaking inquiry right from my website at gwensmith.net. All the links and the show notes from today's episode can be found at gwensmith.net/Graceologie. That's gwensmith.net/Graceologie. Thanks so much for joining me again today. I'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, if you haven't already subscribed, please open up your podcast app and click the subscribe button. Subscriptions and reviews on iTunes and all the podcast apps really make a difference for those of us who are working hard to bring you these shows. And be sure to connect with me on social media. I love connecting with you. I am at Gwen Smith Music on every platform, and the show is at Graceologie. Now get out there and have a beautiful, grace-filled day.